Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Steinhardt. I'm the technology editor here at CBS Interactive, and we're very proud to present The Next Disruption, the Experience Economy and Customer Outcomes. This is a live and interactive webcast sponsored by Sitecore, where we're talking about how to create compelling customer experiences by delivering outcomes, not products. To do this, I'm very proud to introduce Darren Guarnacha, who is the Executive Vice President of Customer Experience at Sitecore. Let me just give you some quick background on our guest expert today. As EVP, Darren connects regularly with customers, with Sitecore's Customer Advisory Board, and with a global community of Sitecore partners to understand and shape how they use Sitecore software to win their customers for life. He's also responsible for analyst relations, ISV partnerships, and alliances. He has over 20 years of experience in the software industry. Prior to joining Sitecore, Darren was Vice President of Product Marketing at Red Dot, which is the Open Text Web Solutions Group. And on the agency side, he was CTO at Whitehorse Studios, which is an interactive firm, and Director of E-Business Operations at Emerald Solutions, which is an e-commerce solutions firm. Darren began his career as Director of Technology at Copper Mountain Trust and Craig Hewson, which is a mid-sized financial company. So he's definitely got a wide range of experience in both customer-facing and business-facing roles. Darren holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Computer Science from Oregon State University, and he joins us today to share his expertise. So I'm looking forward to a fantastic presentation. I just want to remind everybody in the audience that, as I mentioned, this is an interactive webcast. So you can use the Ask a Question button, which is on the top left side of your console, to send in questions. We're going to answer as many of those as we can during a Q&A portion set aside at the end of the presentation. Just in case we don't get a chance to respond, we will definitely send you a note via email to answer your questions. And we're also carrying on a live conversation on Twitter right now. So if you take a look at the hashtag SitecoreExperience, you can join the conversation. You can follow the live feed, which on the module that's at the bottom left of your console. You can add your own thoughts directly in that module, or you can tweet on Twitter. And just make sure that you append the hashtag SitecoreExperience so that we can keep track of the conversation and keep the conversation going. And if you'd like any more information about Sitecore, you can look at the Related Resources widget. That's just to the right of the viewing console. You can download some helpful assets there. And with that, I'll turn things over to Darren.
Thanks, Michael, and hello, everyone. Well, I don't have 20 degrees, but I wish I did. But in my travels, I spent a lot of time talking to customers and companies that do implementations and analyst firms like Gartner and Forrester. And more, I've been starting to see a pretty interesting trend. And that's what I would call digital disruption. Digital disruption really is what's happening in all of our industries, from the Ubers of the world to just about every corner of every industry. We're starting to see a lot of this wholesale digital disruption. Now, the guy you're seeing on the screen here, his name is John Chambers, and he was the former CEO of Cisco Systems, the little company that makes all the routers that powers the internet. Now, John was up on stage one time talking to about 2,500 CMOs, CIOs, CEOs, and he said something pretty staggering. He said, 40% of you will not exist as a meaningful business in about 10 years due to digital disruption. Essentially, it is changing so many industries and so many companies and the way the companies are going to market that if you're not actually paying attention to this trend, if you're not actually actively doing something about this, you may not be here in 10 years. And I thought, wow, that's a pretty powerful statement. And historically, we've seen similar kinds of disruptions and the different kind of technology changes that have happened over the last 30, 40 years. And this is really what I have come to call this new age of disruption that is really going to change the landscape on really what companies are going to make up, the business landscape for tomorrow. Now, one of the things that, I think is the problem in all of this is that we tend to try and keep up with the latest thing. The latest thing, whether it's a new device, whether it's a new channel, we as organizations keep following the new trend, the new tech. And I think that actually might be part of the problem, is that we're trying to keep up with the latest and the greatest. Now, to compound that problem, I think the other thing that is changing every day is the technology behind it, right? So a new technology comes along, a new channel comes along, and then of course we want to go buy something that goes and fixes it. In fact, I think one of the nature of the very problems we're facing is that we're seeing such a fragmentation in the technology marketplace that's trying to solve all of these problems in a very siloed, segmented way. It's actually holding companies back. So I think that the fact that we keep throwing technology at some of these problems isn't actually making it any better, and in some cases it's actually making it worse. So what I'd like to talk to you about today is, how do we take a step back from this? How do we take a step back and a deep breath and really rethink the problem fundamentally? And what I'd like to really share with you is this concept of experience and outcomes. Now, everyone uses the word experience, and sometimes it gets a bit buzzwordy. So let me make it a little bit more real. First of all, let's just talk about a couple of the brands you see on the screen here. These companies are known for experience. Now, Disney, of course, is the experience company. When you go visit Disney, it's all about the experience with you, with your kids. You don't even have to have kids to have a great experience at Disney. They have made it their brand, and that's pretty powerful. Now, on the flip side of that, you have a company like Uber that everyone loves to talk about. The idea that they have taken the friction out of transportation. It's very easy to get. You know what you're going to get it. They've really focused on a singular experience that you would have as a rider that takes the friction out of travel. Now, Apple is an interesting story because Apple has really made their brand about a beautiful experience. They've really understood what customers really wanted. And I'll talk a little bit more about them, but they've really focused on this idea of experience in a different way. Likewise, Starbucks has made their business of getting you to buy $4 to $5 lattes, and it's not about the coffee. You go in there because you can expect a certain level of experience. And lastly, I think Zappos and W Hotels are interesting because in their own way they've innovated and disrupted their own industries, where Zappos, they'll talk to you for as long as you like. Their focus is to have you walking away with, that was an amazing experience. And they actually pay their people more when they talk to their customers for longer on the phone instead of a shorter call time, because they know that the experience is what really drives your rebuy behaviors. And lastly, W, you don't have to check in anymore. You can walk right to your room, use your phone, and log into your room and walk into your room. So all of these are really rethinking the fundamental experiences of what it is to do business with their organization. And I think that while we see some early adopters, we're also seeing quite a bit of laggards. Unfortunately, what we're starting to see is that a lot of companies are essentially force-fitting their experiences. So let me talk about 3 companies that are doing it right first. So I talked about Apple for a minute there. Now, I want you just to think about this iPod that came out years ago, right? What do you think the innovation was there? A lot of people would say, well, it was that click wheel, and that was pretty amazing. But if you look at the marketplace back when they launched that, it's not like the world needed another MP3 player. Really, the innovation here was that Steve Jobs and team took a step back and said, what are people really trying to do here? What's the outcome that they really seek? And it was, I want a beautiful music experience. I want a beautiful listening and music consumption experience. So they took that step back and they understood that what I really need to do is bridge this hardware thing with a beautiful buying experience that lets you explore music. Music's emotional. Music is a thing that you want to experience unto itself, and part of the buying process and discovery process is a part of the experience of music. So it's not about the actual song itself. It's the discovery of the song. So they really rethought the broader experience. And that brings me to this word outcomes. What's the customer really trying to do? So another example, this one is it's a Sitecourse customer, Mizuno. Mizuno actually sells shoes, but really they don't. Really, what Mizuno sells is be a better runner, be a better athlete, beat your last race time, go further, work harder, be more effective, don't get hurt. They're selling the bigger downstream outcomes. It's not about a shoe. It's about being a better athlete. So again, they're understanding what the fundamental need is of their audience and what are they really coming to, yes, they're going to buy a shoe, but that's not what they're really after. They're after being a better runner, beating their last race time, and they're really speaking to that concept, and again, that outcome. And then lastly, here's another company that has really transformed the way they think about their products and their customers. In this case, it's Nutricia Danone, and I'll talk about them a little bit later in more depth, but essentially, they sell products for parents who are going to have a baby. But they're, instead of just selling those products, in this case, let's say some baby formula, they're not just really selling baby formula. What they are really selling is having a healthy, happy baby, and making you a more confident parent. And again, getting back to the deep-seated need that you really had in the first place, the outcome that you were trying to get to and you're hoping this product may satisfy that outcome. So again, I'm going to talk about these guys in a fair bit of depth. But let me talk about some of the companies that are sort of trailing behind, because what I think we're still stuck in many cases, and this is where I think digital disruption is going to all bite us collectively if we don't do something about it, is this idea that companies are still force-fitting products. We're still peddling the product or the feature or the thing, what it does, versus what the customer really is trying to get to. Where are they trying to go? Where is the place they want to be? What's that next state they would like to be at? And it takes a little bit of work to really take that step back out of your own shoes and really understand that. Henry Ford used to say, you can have any color car as long as it's black. But that doesn't work anymore because customers can switch in a minute. We know this. We know that the switching costs are so low, they're one click away from another vendor or maybe even an Amazon. We know that we have to do something to make our products more sticky, and we need to actually create those more deeper relationships and experiences with our customers if we want them to stay customers. And we know we need to adapt to them. So now I'd like you all just to do something with me. I'd like you just to kind of imagine, the last meaningful thing you bought, that last product, that last thing you purchased, whether it's a car or maybe it was a vacation or something that was meaningful to you, though. And I want you just to sort of close your eyes and imagine, what would that have been like if that company that was selling that to you so perfectly understood what you were really trying to achieve, so perfectly understood what your desires were, and they crafted an experience that helped you understand the best ways to get there, understand all the things that they could do for you, even things you hadn't thought about, and really perfectly delivered that amazing experience and that amazing product that perfectly satiated your need and your desire and the outcome you were trying to drive for. Just let that marinate for a minute. Just imagine what that would be like. When those things happen, the results are profound. When those things happen, that first time you got into that Uber and it was just so easy and it was so predictable, the first time you had that amazing buying experience where the person who was helping you so perfectly got you and understood you that you just wanted again and again. This is something that Nordstrom's personal shoppers are legendary for. They so understand their customer. They so understand what the person's trying to achieve that they just keep coming back again and again and again. And that brings me to one of my customers who have done this, and I want to share that story with you because you don't see these every day, and I love sharing the success that this company's had. So I mentioned before that Nutricia Danone makes products. They make baby formula, baby products, baby food, and early life nutrition. Amazing company, part of the Danone family. This one is the Benelux division in Europe. So what they were realizing, they were under pressure. They were being under competitive assault from a bunch of the large multinationals who had competitive products, and they were really trying to establish themselves in this market and really try and create a dominant position. But again, it almost is a commodity, right? Baby formula, what's the difference in that? So they set apart to really create this new platform, this new customer platform that really helped them understand their customer. And it starts with a journey. Of course, it starts with the mother's journey. And the mother's journey is about this mom, maybe first-time mom, maybe it's a second-time mom, but it's about understanding this mom and what she's going through and what she needs in every stage of that journey. And to do that, you have to really understand her. You have to understand what she cares about, what's interesting to her, where she is. Of course, it's a journey because there's a progression, right, from the day she finds out she's pregnant to her pregnancy stages, and then as the baby is born and matures, there's a series of things she needs to know along the way. And of course, being the modern mother, she's also using every tool at her disposal. So she's got lots of different things she can use to get that information. And in fact, there's so much information and sometimes contradictory information, it can be overwhelming. So not only do we have to help her be a confident mom and help her know the right thing, but we also have to help her filter and understand what she needs to know when she needs to know it. So to do that, you really have to listen. You really have to listen and understand really what she has. Now, as a company, right, they also have goals. They really had to understand what are we really trying to achieve here? What is that we want? And we wanted to align what the company's goals were with what the mother's goals were. So this outcome ultimately came to be that we want to create, Nutricia Danone wanted to create a platform that helped moms be confident and understand really really stay on top of where things are at and be that confident mom. Because if you've had kids before, you know that first time is a little bit of a nervous wreck. It's a little bit nerve-wracking. You don't know what you don't know, and it can be confusing. So they really wanted to satisfy that problem. They wanted to achieve that outcome. Now, that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with baby formula. In fact, while becoming a trusted brand will help them sell more baby formula, this was really about helping that mom achieve what she needed and achieve those needs. So they set out to do that and align their goals around that. And along the way, they had to learn a lot about the youth moms. And I think one of the first lessons learned here is that part of this has got to be backed by journey. That journey, that data journey has to be tracked and recorded. You need to understand this mom so you can help her effectively. Now, as the mom progressed through this journey, they learned a ton about her. They learned, do your kids have any allergies? Are you a first-time mom or not? Are you working or not? What's your current situation? What do you hope for? What do you want? And all of that stuff got tracked and recorded and collected, and they used everything that they learned to help that mother be more confident and to make her feel like she was going to have a healthy, happy baby. And that really, at the end of the day, is what any parent really wants. We all want the same thing. And what I think is so interesting about Nutricia is they took that big collective step back and that big deep breath and said, we're going to be helpful. We're going to be helpful, and we're going to be so helpful that these people will do business with us forever because we were that trusted source. And in fact, it has worked. It has worked so well. So they collected everything that they knew about you from every interaction and used everything they've learned about you every time you visited them on a tablet or a phone or your PC. Any of those tools, they were using everything they learned about you to help enrich your experience and give you the right tools. If you want to use their app on your cell phone, you could do that too. I think over 23% of the women in Benelux actually use this app now, which is an incredible penetration stat. And so everyone, again, is using this all the time. And again, everything it learns gets fed back to all the other places you might touch, including things like these kiosks in these trade fairs. These kiosks that can actually project, where your baby is in the mother's journey and how big, and they can project them on the mom's bellies and what they call the magic mirror. So they can do that. And again, it's using all the information, your due date and all the things you've learned. And when they go to trade fairs, they can buy things. And Danone understands that no one wants to carry all this stuff around, so they'll ship it to you for free. And they'll do that. They have your address, so they're connecting all of those things. Again, it's all about just being convenient and easy and understanding kind of what the mom needs in every given point. And they did this with a whole host of tools. In fact, they even integrated with a vending machine in a train station. Because at 2 in the morning, if you're out of formula, you can't be out of formula. So someone's going to the train station to get some more formula. And so the ability to really just understand, again, that need and always being there. One of the big important things for them was to make sure that they always had product for their moms, so that there was never a situation where the mom couldn't get product and couldn't get the formula, because that was so important to the trust in the relationship. So the moral of the story is that by creating this, they have created not only a wonderful experience for moms, but they have created a tremendous amount of resonance with their customer base. And to that end, they have seen some dramatic financial results too. Because, of course, when you build trust and relationships with your customer base, they come back for more. And in these cases, they saw an explosive amount of growth, over almost 1,000% growth year over year, because of this. Now, the customers also, the amount of rebuying that happened in both the physical stores, because they work with brick and mortar stores, as well as the digital channels, also surged. So across the board, they saw incredible spikes in loyalty. They saw incredible growth in repurchasing because they got it right. And again, it's that nirvana moment. It's that aha moment of, you get me. You understand me. And when you do that for your customer, that's when things go well. A couple other interesting lessons learned. I think one of the things that when you think about this idea of digital transformation and how you need to be successful here, the first thing they did was really align those business objectives. really start to think about what are we trying to achieve as a company and how can those align back to our customers and what our customers want. I think that is so important. Sometimes that gets missed. It seems very obvious, but it doesn't always happen. The other thing that they did is they set out up front to say, okay, how are we going to measure this, and what kind of KPIs, what does good look like, and what is it we want to know downstream? Because of course, a lot of times when you do these projects, you have to, first you have to sell it to your management teams. But not only that, but as you want additional investment and you want to take it even further, you want to have those KPIs and those ROI insights that help you understand, hey, this worked and this is what it did for the business. And so in this case, Nutricia did a great job of bringing their executives along on that journey and showing them the profound impact so that they can start to roll this out more broadly in different regions and grow this. I think the other thing that was really interesting is that the alignment across the business was pretty profound. Every part of the business sat together from the the operations and warehousing teams to the marketing team to the technology team. Everyone had a seat at the table, and everyone was really aligned to how to do this. And because of that, they also were willing to really understand what the platform could do. But the platform and the technology came second. I want to be really clear. It was the laser focus on the customer and the goals, and then of course the technology helped and assisted that. But I think what was really important is that business alignment with the stakeholders was so powerful that they were able to get the buy-in at the executive level and then drive this through. And of course the technology helped that all happen faster. But at the end of the day, the people and process was super crucial on the front side of this. So, this is great. We have a great story here. So how do you do this? How do we get here? And really, what is your outcome for your customer? And I have some things I'd love to share with you and sort of a couple frameworks that I think you can use to think about how to achieve this. How to get to the promised land, if you will. And the first one is what I call context and outcomes. So if you think about one of the things that Nutricia did really well is they collected a lot of customer intelligence, right? They really knew, like day one, I need to know when your due date is, right? That's the most important thing that they needed to know because that was the anchor in which the journey was built. So they really had to use and trade content to learn, right? So there's a trade of, you deliver content and in exchange you get information, right? So they're, as moms are reading about allergies, if moms are reading about, is this your first child, your second child, as they're learning about, or they're reading some of the content, you're collecting intelligence. You're learning. If you're reading an article about, going back to work after a second child, well, that kind of tells you they probably have a first child. So part of this is really, that intelligence and taking the context with the content, right, and blending those things together. So content plus intelligence becomes context, right? It gives you the context of their situation, right? Now you apply that context, and this is where Nutricia really did a great job, is really starting to apply that context in a very consistent way, no matter where the mom reacted, no matter where that mom was visiting them, whether it was on a cell phone, in the mobile app, or maybe it was at home on their PC, or maybe it was calling the care line, talking to a nurse, a certified nurse who helps them understand why their baby is having colic issues. Whatever those things are. All those things got collected and used and then shared back so that every next experience was built on the previous experience. So that idea of applying that context across every interaction point with the mom in this case creates the journey. Now, when you apply journeys with products, right, because products do things for you, right, but it's a combination of the journey and the product that helps achieve the outcome. And the point here is simply that it's not just the product. You're not just selling the product. You're selling the customer journey too. And that's the way to think about outcomes. When you really understand what your customers want, then the whole thing becomes a combination of products and the journey, not only the journey to buy, but the journey to own. And so said a slightly different way, there are really two experiences you may have with any organization you do business with. Imagine buying a car or any sort of meaningful purchase you may make. When you buy that product, right, there's an acquisition process, right? There's that journey that happens as you're acquiring, and of course you should be listening to the customer. You should be understanding them, trying to predict what you need from them, and learning and applying context and delivering the right things back. but also there's an ownership journey, right? You also own the product. So now what's that journey like? And again, you should be collecting that information, you should be understanding that customer and applying those things across that journey in the same way. And in that case, you create a deep amount of loyalty. And this is how you start to drive that loyalty, because you think beyond a product. You start to think about the outcomes that they were trying to achieve. When you buy a car, for instance, yes, the car gets you from place to place, but that's not really what you're buying. You're also buying something that is maybe a reflection of your personality. Maybe you really love the latest and greatest tech gadgets and you're going to go buy that Tesla. Or maybe you really care about the environment and you're going to buy an electric vehicle, and that's an expression of your beliefs. Whatever those things are, there's more than just the product, right? There's the whole ownership experience. And in fact, I've seen time and time again companies that do it right transcend the product and create an experience layer around the product that allows them to command premium prices, to create greater loyalty, reduce their cost of servicing the customer, because they've done a great job of delivering those. So one of the things we typically talk about in the marketplace is this idea of evolving marketing beyond just typical marketing. And really what we talk about is context marketing. Now context marketing really has three pillars, right? Content's in the center, because without content, it's very difficult to deliver an experience. Now, imagine, it's an article about how best to buy a car or how best to get the most out of a product that you just bought. This idea of content is the currency, right? Content is the currency that we use to engage customers, right? It's the coin in which we purchase attention and an interest from our customers. So content is still the anchor in all of this. We still need that. Now, but on top of that, we need to have to collect contextual intelligence. The things, in the case of Nutricia, where they said, okay, well, are you a first-time mom or a second-time mom? Are you working or not, right? All those things matter in understanding where that mom is, in her journey. And then lastly, we need automation. We need omni-channel automation to execute this stuff, because again, we don't have 1 million people on staff. We need to be able to do this stuff in a smart way. We need to be able to deliver these things in a way that's scalable and things that we can do on a go-forward basis. So the three things we talk about in context marketing, I'll talk about those in each in turn, because I think they'll kind of give you ideas on how some of this will all come together. So content is still the backbone. I think this is something that from Forrester says quite often, that web content management is still the backbone. You still need content, right? And with content marketing, right, and context marketing, content is still very important. You need to produce content. It has to be meaningful and useful for your customers. And again, content and experience itself can help you transcend the value of a product. Tesla is more than just a car. Tesla is an experience beyond just the car, because they have thought about how to make that whole driving experience be more than just a car. And again, that comes from content. That comes from experience. Likewise, we see that even today, while the user behavior trends are shifting around a little bit, a lot of things still drive back to modern websites and mobile sites. There's still a preponderance of how people interact with brands tend to happen on the web. Whether you're in a cell phone waiting in line for your grocery store, we also see that the usage patterns are very interesting. They're very intertwined between web and mobile. One of the biggest ahas that we've had is that it's not a one or the other. It's a both. People use the web and traditional PC-based web and mobile-based web in very different ways. In fact, the different kinds of tasks you'll be performing will dictate where you start and where you transition to. And oftentimes, if it's something that's say a more complex task, you'll start it on your phone, but then you finish it on the PC. And so this idea of sort of channel transcendence is a very important concept. But these are still high priorities in almost every user's mind. They want to be able to do that, and they want you to know them, and they want you to be consistent so that you recognize, aha, you were doing this before, so let me just pick up where we left off. That's very important to customers, and being able to be consistent with them. Now, if content is king, then context is certainly queen, because in every way, context makes content better. And one of the things we have seen time and time again is that when you put the right content in front of somebody in the right place, when you put that article in front of that mom, helping her understand what's going on with her baby in that moment, those are those magical moments. Those are those 0 moments of truth where you help them with things that they didn't even need to know they needed to know. And you help them not only just get a product, but actually have a better experience and transcend and get them closer to that outcome. And we know that the context surrounds consumers every day, right? There's so much context around them, both situational context, geographic context, what's their intentional context, where's their intent today. All those things feed into we can be delivering the right thing to our customer and giving them the things that they need now, even if they don't recognize it. And again, sometimes even understanding things that that they need that they're not even ready to know, but we're teeing them up for that. And again, that has to be done in a data-driven way, right? You have to have data to do this. And here's an interesting shot of one of the tools that one of our customers is using, and this is the timeline of the customer's journey, right? It's helping you see exactly where the customer is, both from when they started anonymously and as they evolved over time with the relationship with the brand, and helping see key milestones in them. But all of this is data, is backed in data. And having that singular view that you can use on everything that you've learned along the way is so crucial, because then you can be progressing the relationship. And again, helping anticipate that customer's needs and helping them move forward and moving them along the journey that they need to know, whether it's a prescribed journey like a 9-month pregnancy, or it's a car buying experience, or it's something you buy on a more commodity basis. The ability to do these things. And of course, now with the Internet of Things, now all these devices are going to be actually producing more data and more context. Again, more value and more ability to start to deliver more and more of these kind of contextual experiences that help, again, anticipate need and deliver the right thing to the right person at the right place and at the right time.
Thanks so much.
Now, the one thing that...
interrupt for 1 second. I'm sorry. This is Michael once again. I apologize for interjecting, but I do want to remind everybody in the audience that questions are open. So if you hit the Ask a Question button on your upper left console widget, you can send in your questions. We're going to respond to as many of them as we can during a Q&A portion that's set aside at the end of the presentation. And until then, get your questions in and tweet using the hashtag SiteCoreExperience. And let's move into the second half with Darren.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michael. And great reminder. So one of the things I think that I mentioned this earlier in the session, is this idea of platform disintegration is not sustainable. And I think one of the things that I see holding our customers back is this idea of a bunch of tools that don't talk to each other. I think one of the pieces of advice I would give all of you, and one of the things I think Nutricia Danone has done quite well, is they've really seamlessly stitched together their entire platform into a single integrated platform for their customers. And when they think about how they bring it all together, I'll give you a great example. I talked about the idea that a mom can call the care line and talk to a registered nurse practitioner who can give them advice about their baby. Well, that care line consultant is actually using a CRM system. That CRM system is also feeding back in to say, here's some concerns, baby seems to have some allergies, and they're noting those things back. And that can impact the next customer experience. So they've taken the time to integrate all of the solutions and, again, bring all that knowledge back into a single central place that allows that customer's experience to be progressive and learning, so that you don't have to keep going back to the well. So this is one of the things, and this is one of the things that Nutricia set out as one of their early priorities, is let's put together a composite platform that knows our customers everywhere they go and brings everything back to a single connected solution that allows them to use that knowledge in every single place. I think this is a focus area that I'm starting to see some of my customers really prioritize. I think if it's not on your agenda, it's absolutely something you need to have on your agenda, because to create these seamless experiences, to create that outcomes-driven customer experience, this is a mandatory. This is something that everyone should be really focusing on right now. Sort of to add a little bit more color to that, when you think about the idea of data and you're collecting all this data, it's not enough to just have the data in a big pool, in a big lake, or people call it all sorts of crazy things nowadays, data lakes, data pools. We don't want to call them data warehouses anymore, because of course that sounds like things get dusty and it's hard to get things back out. But I think the point really is that data has to drive action, and data has to drive automation. Right? Having a piece of data about a mom whose baby is having colic issues at 2 in the morning does you no good if you can't do something about it within near real time. So I think the idea that everything you collect and build needs to be connected together, so that you need to know that mom in a very singular way. And you need to actually bring that, in a way that you can automate it, because automation is the other key element here. When you think about what Nutricia is doing, they are touching, millions and millions and millions of mothers, and they're doing it in a high scale, highly automated way. But it's still very contextual and sensitive, right? It's very meaningful, and it's all done also in aid of the mom, right? It's not creepy marketing. It's nothing that they don't have consent to do. They focus on how do we be helpful, and that mentality is very important, right? Because you have a lot of data here that you're going to collect, and you have to use that in a very governed way that is done in aid of the customer, and it's a mindset that you have to have, and a governance process that you really need to build around that says we're going to use this for the benefit of our customer, and we're going to do this to be helpful and relevant. Now, there's an old saying that says, you can be too personal, you can be too creepy, but you can't be too relevant. And I think that's the watchword. So as you think about using this data and actioning this data, the litmus test is: are we being helpful? Is this going to help us, or is this going to help our customer? And if you prioritize helping your customer and focusing on that, then that's how you avoid the creepy factor. That's how you avoid being intrusive, because again, it's in aid of. And again, if you're governed also by this idea of outcome, you're thinking about the downstream outcomes that they really wanted. That defocuses you from your products, because now you're just helping your customer achieve the goals that they want, and your product will happen along the way. And if you've built a beautiful experience wrapped around that product, if you've built a solution that solves their outcome need, then those things come for free. But I think it's a way of thinking. It's a way of approaching your customers or market. And I strongly encourage you all to rethink how you go to market, to rethink how you engage your customers, and think about outcomes and think about data and collecting it. Because at the end of the day, context, as we like to say, helps us turn strangers into customers, because you start to know them. You start to know them in a way that no other vendor is doing. Now, if you're not doing this, I promise you, one of your competitors are. In this age of digital disruption, this is what's happening to every company in every corner of the world. The idea that someone's thinking about, how do I disrupt the market? How do I become that frictionless, so easy to do business with kind of company? How do I help deliver, those next generation experiences? Someone's thinking about it. Someone is going to become the next Nutricia Danone in your industry. It's time to start thinking about how you can be that. How can you be the disruptor? What can you do? What are the outcomes that you can deliver to your customer base? And then how can you use experience and context to deliver those outcomes? And how can you transcend the product that you sell in a way that satisfies those needs and satisfies those things? I think this is a bigger conversation than just putting up a new website or doing digital marketing. Context marketing is about going further than that. Context marketing is about fundamentally understanding what your customers are really trying to achieve in the first place and delivering on those needs and doing it in a way that is bigger than a product. When you do that, that's when you start to see 1,000% type growth situations. That's when you start to see the hockey stick. So that is my call to action for you, is to start to rethink your business, rethink context, rethink experiences, and how can you disrupt your own industry? Because if you're not doing it, someone else very well might. So I think at that point, I'm going to turn it over to Michael, and we'll enter into Q&A.
Thanks so much, Darren. We do have a couple of questions that have come in from the audience, and a couple of questions that I thought of myself as we're going through the conversation. So we're going to start with some audience questions. How can this concept apply practically for a new business startup that has limited resources? That's question number one.
Okay. Well, I think in some ways, as a new business and as a startup, you are not carrying any baggage, right? I think a lot of the challenge with some of the more established companies is there's a lot of systems in place. There's a lot of sort of enterprise baggage, if you will, that you have to overcome. But as a startup, you don't have any of that baggage, right? You can use any tool you want. You can have systems. So what I would say is I would take that step back. I would think about what's the opportunity, what's the customer outcome we want to drive, what information could I collect that would make me so helpful and help achieve those outcomes or help my customer achieve those outcomes for themselves. And since you have a green field, you're in a much better place to be able to weave those things together and deliver those experiences. You can also think about the journey, right? What's the customer journey, right? What's the buying and owning experiences, right? As you step back and you sort of whiteboard out, right? What's the perfect journey? What is it? And I mean that from a customer standpoint. What's the perfect buying experience? Because you also can put the hat on and say, all right, yeah, they're coming to buy something. They may not even understand the outcome they're really trying to get to, but I do. I'm going to help educate them on that. I'm going to help guide them in their journey, and I'm not going to try and sell them something, but I'm going to help them enable them to buy. But I'm going to help them enable them to buy in a way that more perfectly satisfies what that core need is, what that latent need was. This is the holy grail for how customers want to be engaged with. This is how people want to do business with organizations. They want them to lend their expertise, become that trusted confidant. In the case of that startup, Mizuno, right? Mizuno is a fairly young company, right? They are disrupting their entire market. They're going up against the Nikes of the world because they can actually do stuff that the Nike has a much harder time pivoting on. So I think you're in a much better place in that case.
All right, thanks so much. Next question seems to come from a slightly larger company in the sense that there are going to be times when individual departments have different KPIs. So how can a context marketing solution sort of manage a campaign where individual departments might have different KPIs?
Great question. So let's think about this as let's call it a CPG org. So each brand, let's say, has their own KPIs or their own kind of customers. Maybe you even have different segments. So part of this can be done at the brand level. Right? You can actually bring this down to a brand level. However, I would caution you in the other way to look at departments. Right? One of the biggest challenges I think I still see in larger organizations is the departmental silo problem, the departmental mentality. The email team sits over here, the web team sits over there, the social media team sits over yonder, and so on and so on. Everyone has their own KPIs. Now that has to change, right? What needs to happen is a unifying customer experience mandate and what I would argue an outcomes mandate to rethink the way you actually engage your customers holistically. And those silos need to be torn down because that is getting in your way. And that when I attend conferences or I'm speaking at conferences, and I ask the question every time, what's holding you back? What's in your way to doing this? And almost always it's organization. It's org change. So part of this is advocating up to the C-level, getting CEO buy-in. More and more boards are paying attention to this now. So I think some of this is cultural and some of this is organizational. You really do need to fight those fights as well. In the case that Nutricia did a great job of building alignment in their brand, right? They're a brand in a much, a $3.5 billion brand and a $20 billion company, right? So they're a division of that, but they've also showed success, right? So showing this in one brand, one division, we likewise have similar results going on in L'Oreal, where L'Oreal has different divisions, and each of those divisions are equally incentivized in different ways and have different kind of markets. So, and they're in some ways they're competitive, but they're all racing to drive towards this because they see, in the case of beauty products, beauty products aren't about selling makeup. Beauty products, in the case of L'Oreal, L'Oreal has realized this is about making women feel beautiful. This is about being that personal beauty consultant for life. That's the game for them. That's where they want to achieve that, where they want to become that trusted advisor and that trusted source. So each one of those subdivisions are treating it a little differently, but they all align against this idea of outcomes. They've all figured out what they want to do to that greater sort of customer experience goal. So the tactics will vary at the brand level, is a long-winded answer. But I think organizationally you still need to fill out the philosophy of outcomes to be sort of a unifying element.
Well, that actually dovetails with the next question that came in, because when you think about customer outcomes, you think about the feeling that they get or the task that you've helped them accomplish. I mean, it seems like a fairly obvious point, corollary to marketing. So why aren't more companies rethinking their businesses around this? And I think that the cultural issue might be one of the answers, but is there a greater context for that?
Well, I think change is hard. Change is hard. I think that's the other sort of simple answer. Yes, there's work change problems, right? There's challenges there. I think one of my goals, and when I present this sort of session, is it's a bit of a wake-up call, right? The John Chambers' comment of 40% of these businesses are going to be gone, in a decade. That's scary, right? That's the kind of conversation that's starting to happen, at the CEO, between the CEO and his board, or her board, right? This is the conversation that's happening, and we need to be ready for this, and we need to be starting to think about how to do this, and start also advocating this upstream, because if we don't do it, someone else will, and that's what's happening to so many businesses. I'm sure the taxi companies felt pretty smug 5 years ago, and then along comes Uber, right? Dollar Shave Club is disrupting the pants off of Procter & Gamble's Gillette division. So best to Clayton Christensen said pretty well in his book Innovator's Dilemma, an Innovator's Solution, right? If disrupt yourself before someone else does. And in this case, I think this is some pretty clear guidance on why to do it. But again, change is hard, and I would give you two pieces of advice on how to drive the change, right? One is realize there's an organizational element to it. There's a change management element to it, which means you really need some executive level support. You need that buy-in up top. And I'll completely contradict myself and say, and start with low-hanging fruit. One of the things we call, we have a team that just helps customers do this kind of business optimization. And one of the things we advocate is to do, sort of quick wins, sharpshooting, show some profound results in a fairly small context, right? Don't boil the ocean, but start somewhere, show some profound results. In fact, the Nutricia case came out of one of those projects where we were just trying to say, okay, what would we do pretty quickly? And very, very rapidly we started to see the results come back, and that fueled the next step, and that fueled the next step. And all of a sudden, it got a little wider. But we didn't start there. We started in a little bit of a very narrow focus to try and prove out some points, and that then gave us essentially the momentum, if you will, to then take that to the senior management to get even more buy-in. So sometimes you can start with quick wins and focused targets, but also start early trying to get the executive support.
Cool. So I want to switch over to two follow-up questions that I had, just based on my experiences with different marketing efforts at different companies. But when you talk about getting an article in front of an expectant mom, for example, what's the format that these things are being delivered in? How are you reaching out to that? Is that via email, or is that some sort of social engagement? As you mentioned, there's a problem with balancing the creepy factor with the relevance factor. So what's the best way to reach out?
The answer is yes to all of those. You essentially have to engage where they want to engage. So email is a great sort of way to sort of push the conversation along, especially if they've not been back in a little while. So that's a great way to sort of nudge and progress. But email is a limited, there's a limited amount of things you can do, and honestly, it's quite saturated, right? So although interestingly enough, Nutricia has incredible open rates of over 50% because they have established trust with this customer base, where they just open every email because they know what's in that email is goodness. So they can expect that. But certainly, social, to build awareness and to share. I think one of the things that that moms are in this particular demographic, they share a lot because they're excited, and it's in a very emotional experience. So there's a lot of sharing that happens with that demographic. So social is a very good tool. They use a ton of mobile apps. They use mobile web. They use PC-based web and tablet-based web. They have videos. One of the interesting stories that I heard is they actually put out a whole exercise line for free to help moms get in, either stay in shape while they're pregnant or get back in shape after they've had their baby. That has nothing to do, by the way, with selling baby formula. It just goes back to healthy, happy baby, confident mom, right? Moms that feel great and they want to be a part of that experience, right? So they actually have videos that you can download, and you can exercise along with them too. That's sort of optimized for you just had a baby and now you want to do these things and get back in shape. So they use just about every channel that they can. But I think the important thing is, how many channels doesn't really matter. It's channels that know you, channels that are smart enough to say, here's where you're at, and because I know where you're at, here's what I think you should do next, right? That idea of knowing the context of the situation and being smart enough to sort of deliver the right thing based on you. Again, all in the aid of help, all on the idea of being helpful and useful, not creepy, not it's about relevance, not creepy. But that's when you have that mentality, that's how you avoid it.
Right. So and that actually leads very neatly into my second question, because you're talking about being helpful versus being annoying, and you also have the issue of using data accurately and correctly in order to reach those conclusions and sort of take that leap where I'm fairly certain that you're going to need X, and therefore I'm going to serve that up to you. So in my experience, if I do a search, for an example, for a Broadway show, ads for that particular show are going to start showing up on my Gmail, and they're going to start showing up on my Facebook. And it doesn't matter whether I search for it because I want to see it, or whether I've already seen it, or whether I'm thinking about somebody else having a ticket to it. So the context there is absent, and the ads are trending more toward the creepy side than toward the relevant side. So I guess what I'm asking is how does the context and how does the abundance of data that you have, and how do the analytics that you put behind it guide you more toward the helpful?
Good question. It's actually one of my biggest pet peeves too, the creepy, annoying advertising that follows you for weeks. I once bought an air conditioning unit from HomeDepot.com, and for the next 10 or so weeks, I got the advertising for the thing I bought on their own website.
Right.
And that speaks to the fundamental problem, which is lack of context, right? All they know is you looked at it. They don't understand why. They don't know that you bought it, although they should. And I think what we are seeing now is that by using all the information, it would have been useful to know that had I put together, let's say, a project at HomeDepot.com, and then I started saying, okay, this is why I'm looking for it, because I'm trying to solve this problem. I'm trying to achieve some outcome, and you would have the knowledge to know, okay, I either bought it or I decided I don't need it. Either way, that context would stop that ad from coming. It might be useful if they wanted to advertise to me to say, hey, now that you have this, here's the next best thing you should do. Here's how you can save money on your energy bill, and progress the conversation, right? Because they understand the context of I just bought it. If I didn't buy it, perhaps they could be suggesting something else. But the fact is they just don't have quite enough context to be smart about it. So they're just using a blunt force instrument to sort of hammer that home. Now, we can also argue, should they be wasting money for that long? Because I just don't think that's really effective. But that's a different thing. I think the problem is they don't have enough context, and they're not being smart about how they use it.
And how would obviously the Sitecore platform is the corollary here, but what are the filters that go into sort of taking context, bringing it more to the fore, and elevating it in terms of weighting the different pieces of data that we have, and guiding the marketer toward the more relevant piece of content?
I think it's informed by the outcome. I think that you have to start there, right? What's the person trying to achieve? What do they really need? And then you find how can I get them there? How can I help them? Oftentimes when people go through a decision process, right, there's things in their brain that they're mental tick boxes, if you will, that they need to understand, right? If I'm trying to pick a college, right, there are 4 things I need to be able to tick in the mental tick boxes to know. Can I afford it? Do they have the right majors that I want to study? Do I think the location is going to work for me? And do I think I'm going to fit in there? Right? There's those 4 processes you have to tick through. So to pick the right place where I can feel like I'm going to belong, and I'm going to have a great educational experience, that's the stuff you need to guide them through. So in that situation, I'm going to step back and say, what do I need to learn about these people so that I can help them through that decision process? And every company's got a similar approach. Every company, in Sitecore, I would argue that we step back and we say, how do I help companies achieve customers for life? That's our sort of mantra. That's our goal. We want to help companies change the way they do business so they help win customers for life. So now what do I need to learn about these companies to help them achieve that goal? And likewise, every company has those workshops, has those things they have to go through. We run customers through that in what we call our business optimization workshops to kind of discover that. Agencies can do it for you. Integrators can do it for you. There's lots of ways to figure that out. But there's a way, it's a lot of whiteboarding and sticky notes and things like that to kind of discover that. But it's really about thinking journey first and outcomes first, and then understanding, well, what's the things I need to know, and what kind of context should I be applying in any given situation to help them get there and get where they want to go. And it's really that simple. It sounds complicated. It's not. It's very simple. It's just stepping back, taking the deep breath, and positioning things in that way.
Okay. So that brings us, I think we probably have time for one or two more questions, and not much more than that. But as I mentioned, if you have questions and we haven't responded to them live, we can definitely respond via email. So don't hesitate to send those questions in. But the examples that you've given so far are fairly consumer-centric, especially around expectant moms. But how do outcomes and experiences apply in B2B organizations and other industries?
That's a great question. So I'll pick on B2B, and I'll also even pick on the really hard one, government. So B2B, at the end of the day, people are still people, right? It's really still people selling to people in the business world. I think in some ways B2B can actually be easier because there tends to be a longer consideration cycle. You tend to think about things more. You're still trying to achieve an outcome for the business. The outcomes become slightly different. You're trying to achieve a dual role of what do I need for the business, and often selfishly, we don't think about this, but people are trying to improve their careers, right? So they want to buy something that's going to make them successful. So it's a combination of really understanding sort of the motivations and the needs for the business buyer, right? The business buyer or whatever the constituents are in whatever it is that you're selling to them. And a context applies equally well, and outcomes apply equally well. It's just really understanding what's that business really need, why are they buying this thing in the first place, and what's that buying journey, and how do you enable them to buy, right? We think so often about how do we do sales enablement. We don't think nearly enough about how we help buyers buy. How do we help people achieve that? And even better, if we can actually help them discover, the 5 things they should really be asking and they didn't, that's a very powerful tool. So really, again, understanding the deep needed drivers behind what they're trying to get to, and equally the ownership experience, because again, we want them to be customers for life. We want them to stay a customer and buy, and continue to use our products and even maybe buy other products, right? So B2B is, in some ways, a bigger opportunity because what's happened in the B2B world is, even in B2B commerce, the B2B world wants what the consumer world has, and they're starting to ask for it because of the consumerization of technology. They are absolutely starting to demand the same capabilities that the consumer world has.
All right. Unfortunately, that brings us to the top of the hour, and there are actually 1 or 2 questions that we haven't been able to respond to, and I guarantee you that we will respond via email. And there was one audience member who asked about whether this presentation is being recorded and whether it will be available for viewing on demand, and the answer is a resounding yes. So I hope that you've enjoyed today's webcast presentation, and it will be available for on-demand viewing within about 48 hours from right now. So you can feel free to pass along the link, the registration link, and colleagues can tune in at any point and get the information that you want them to have. And as I mentioned, if you want to have more information about Sitecore, you can use the related resources downloads, which are to the right of your viewing console. And once again, I want to thank everybody for participating both in the Q&A and in the Twitter feed. And I want to thank Darren for a very engaging and active, lively presentation. I want to thank Sitecore for sponsoring this event. And I want to remind everybody that my name is Michael Steinhardt for CBS Interactive. And have a great day.